Grading toward the center tables here so we can kind of fill this in. That would be great. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your cooperation. Hopefully, we got some pretty interesting conversation coming up. I know that the man conducting the debate moderation is quite the entertainer. I've seen him live myself. I've even been on the stage with him semi-involuntarily for one of his performative acts. I'd like to welcome to the stage your debate moderator, Doc Dixon.
Thank you. You couldn't have found a creepier way to say magic show than performative acts. Yes. Wow, thanks for that credibility builder. All right, everyone, are you ready for the, oh wait, are we getting, yeah, are we ready for the debate? Okay, first I want to congratulate all of you because there are basically the three biggest political parties in the country right now. One, the Democrats are not doing much of anything, and between us and the other one, we Libertarians are the only ones smart enough to be gathering in temperatures above 30 degrees below zero. Yes. Good for us. I believe that is the real reason Chris Christie dropped out of the debate. He pictured himself 20 years from now saying to his grandchild, the grandchild looks at his foot and says, Grandpap, why are you missing a little toe? Well, I lost that to frostbite when I was trying to win 9th place in the Republican nomination. Of course, Nikki Haley is fine. She's very warm. Every time it gets a little too cold up in Iowa, she just says to one of her assistants, please throw another First Amendment on the fire. Keep up, people, keep up. We're not the only party. Some of the punchlines you have to know that. Maybe bomb something. That would warm things up. So I know there's probably a couple elephants in the room now. I am your moderator. I am not a journalist, as most debate moderators appear to be. I am not an attorney. My nickname, Doc, to my mother's disappointment, it is not short for doctor. To my mother's surprise, it's not short for Department of Corrections. Better not be. Oh, thank you, Fed. But actually, I basically the only skills of this job, frankly, are to show up on time, nailed it, and to read the questions. Well, I'll be nailing that in a few seconds. But why did I want to be here? When they asked me to do it, I was like excited. Oh, wow, sure. My job, my full-time gig, is entertaining people, and I hope I don't lose you in some of the jargon, is entertaining large groups of people, and this little jargon you may not have heard, without social distancing. Now, to quote the great Norm Macdonald, I don't know if we have any history buffs out there, but back in March 2020, my job was largely made illegal. We'll edit that out of the tape. I have no idea. There was some spiritual significance here. In high school, I never ran track. Should I have taken it like that? I have no idea what that was. Had a vague Masonic kind of vibe to it. I am Zargon, king of the Batananites. Okay, anyway. Like I said, my job was largely made illegal, and it was a bit rough, to say the least. And then going through that and seeing, people going to the French Laundry or getting their hair done, or I'll never forget this one mayor going off on a vacation to Mexico with a little umbrella in his drink. Well, he told people on video, but you stay at home, and that sucked. So that's why I'm here. Now, the other elephant in the room is, what about debates where you're thinking, well, that person won't be president? And of course, I'm referring to the GOP debates, where basically they're playing their version of Survivor, but with less attractive people. Chris Christie just dropped out. Oh, surprise. Who's going to get his endorsement? Who cares? Nikki Haley, whatever. Ron, whatever. They're all jockeying for that second place, to be captain of the JV team. I'm not really sure to be a talking head on Fox News. The other party, the Democrats, You know, it's kind of tough to compare the two. On one hand, you have geriatric ramblings, sexual scandals, foreign espionage accusations, presidency rife with nepotism, and a candidate who feels they're entitled to your money. And on the other hand, perhaps that wasn't the best illustration, that hands thing. So anyway, it makes me all the more eager to bring up the people I am going to bring up now for our Libertarian Party debate. As we bring them up, I'll call you up one at a time. If you would please have a seat starting here, going down that way. Please let's welcome Chase Oliver. Jacob Hornberger. Don't be fooled, they're shaking hands. They'll be at each other's throats in just seconds. Michael Rechtenwald. Welcome, welcome. Michael Termott. Welcome.
Are both hands really the same?
Yeah, they are. They're the same. It's just baffling. Yeah, yeah.
Come on.
And Lars Mapstead. Those of you watching at home, this stage is even smaller than it appears on your screen. Let's welcome them all as they get seated with a big round of applause, please. Now, we're going to throw a curve at you. I don't know if you're aware of this. I know most debates begin with, and now the candidate will make their opening remarks. And I thought, nah. When we were planning this and talking about it, we thought, wouldn't it be a nice change of pace if instead the candidates were one at a time to come up to the lectern and give us a couple of minutes of their inaugural address when they win the presidency? Do you like the sound of that? Yeah. So, I'm sorry. We don't have Hail to the Chief. I apologize. That's my fault, but let's welcome them up. Chase Oliver.
So first and foremost, I want to thank my friends and family for putting the family Bible right there and allowing me to take the oath of office. But the first thing that it's not working. There we go. It's all good. There we go, now it works. So I want to say thank you to my friends and family for being there as I swore the oath of office. And before I get started, I just want to go ahead and do 4 things right here. I'm going to issue 4 pardons to Julian Assange, Edward Snowden, Leonard Peltier, and, God, why is my name blanking right now? Ross Ulbricht. There we go. Those are the 4 people that are going to be pardoned today. And why am I pardoning those 4 people today? To let people know that freedom is coming to the United States of America. If you are currently in federal prison for a crime that lacks a victim, you didn't commit force, fraud, coercion, or theft, I can tell you right now, the doors are coming open and you are being free. Ladies and gentlemen, if I am your first libertarian president of the United States, and both foreign and domestic freedom will be on the agenda. So first and foremost, we have to fix our warfare state that we have in this country. I got started in politics because people got sent to go fight and die in wars that were based on lies, and we're not doing it anymore. We're closing bases, we're bringing troops home, and we're letting peace and diplomacy what rules our foreign policy. And as far as our domestic policy, we're going to fight for the freedom of every individual, whether you're an immigrant or whether you're here native born, whether you're a business owner or a worker. Each and every person will be owed their human rights. If you're not harming anyone, if you're not committing force, fraud, coercion, or theft, the only promise I can make to you as president is I'm going to seek to be out of your life as much as possible. And lastly, I'm ready, willing, and able to fix the problem of our economy. And it starts with balancing the budget, and no president should ever be elected again who will not veto a balance, who will not sign a budget that isn't balanced. I will never, ever support deficit spending because it's time for the kids and grandkids of this country to be free. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Jacob Hornberger.
My fellow Americans, thank you for trusting me and the Libertarian Party by electing me your president. Over the next 4 years, my aim will be to have America lead the world to the highest reaches of freedom, peace, prosperity, and harmony that mankind has ever seen. Recognizing that the powers of the president are limited by the Constitution, I nonetheless want to share with you my vision as to the necessary steps to achieve this goal. The dismantling of the national security state and its vast empire of foreign and domestic military bases, which Martin Luther King correctly called the greatest purveyor of violence in the world, and the restoration of a limited government republic with a basic military force. The elimination of all restrictions on the free movements of goods, services, and people across borders, which will bring an end to the perpetual crises, death, suffering, and police state along the border. The immediate repeal of Social Security, Medicare, and all other socialist programs, and a restoration of faith in the free market and the charitable hearts of the American people. The end of the drug war, the restoration of civil liberties and privacy, the end of income taxation, gun control, the separation of money in the state, economy in the state, healthcare in the state, and education in the state. Finally, pursuant to the power vested in me by the Constitution, I hereby pardon all nonviolent offenders in the federal system, and Julian Assange, Edward Snowden, and Ross Ulbricht. Let's make America the greatest and freest country in history. Thank you again for your trust.
Thank you for being accommodating. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike Rechtenwald.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you for having chosen liberty for the American people. In electing me, you took a giant step towards self-government. You didn't take a step toward putting a white knight in office to fix all of your problems. Instead, you want freedom, and that means freedom from the tyranny of an interloping and repressive state and all of its apparatuses, including the IRS, the CIA, the FBI, the CDC, and you name it, which I will abolish immediately. You wanted personal freedom, freedom of speech, and no more interloping federal government censoring your speech and issuing nonstop propaganda. That will end. You wanted economic freedom, freedom to carry out commerce, but without regulators breathing down your necks and enforcing infringements on your right to innovate and to sell and buy. You wanted financial freedom, freedom from inflation and debt, and the legal tender laws will be eradicated. You wanted the freedom to use alternative parallel currencies to erode the power of the Fed's money monopoly, and until I sign a bill to eliminate it entirely. You wanted freedom from the military-industrial complex. No more wars, either proxy or direct. We will not send any more foreign aid or military aid to any country around the world. You wanted medical freedom, you got it. Freedom to decide what you put in your own body and whether you consult with a doctor in terms of your own health. You wanted the freedom to have a localized, decentralized governance, exercising the right to nullify unconstitutional laws at the state and local levels. Thank you.
Mr. Michael Termott.
Nice to see more people in this room than any other inaugural gathering ever. Biggest ever.
78,000 official count.
78 million people
70
here. My fellow Americans, I stand before you today not merely because my party is the philosophical descendant of the founders of this nation, but because you are. I ask your help in turning the page on a dark chapter in American history during which the expansion of government power took place at the cost of personal liberty. I ask you to inaugurate an administration whose success will not be defined by books of history, but will be measured by the millions of personal success stories, seldom told but deeply motivated, that represent your history, your stories, and your success, measured by nothing more and nothing less than your own personal standards of success. I ask you to embrace a new relationship with the government that we will tolerate, a government less prone to economic disaster, less ambitious for international war, and more ready to protect your individual liberty. My fellow Americans, ask not what the state can do for you, but what you and we can do together to remove the barriers to economic growth, to release the roadblocks on economic and entrepreneurial endeavor. What we can do together to advance personal liberty. I ask you, look not to the state for personal inspiration. Look to your faith, your own guiding light. Look to your family. Look where it is that I look to find the best of America inside of each one of you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And now, please welcome Lars Mapstead.
Ladies and gentlemen, the House of Representatives has just elected me the President of the United States. And you say, why is that? Well, because we denied 270 electoral votes to both Trump and Biden, and neither of them were able to win. And the House of Representatives, just like they picked the Speaker of the House, it has been very contentious. But they have finally elected the Libertarian because they couldn't take electing Donald Trump or Joe Biden again. They couldn't stand it. Now it's time to get to work. Unfortunately, that was the hard part. That was the easy part, getting elected. Now we have the hard part. We have to return our electors to a service position. We have to get our system unrigged. There's so many pieces of our system that is rigged that we have to unrig. Our healthcare system, our education system, our criminal justice system, our election system. And I have put forth the Voters' Bill of Rights, and so I'm going to be working with Congress to enact my Voters' Bill of Rights to level the playing field so that all libertarians across the land can have an equal shot, that independents can have an equal shot at winning our election system. What we need to do is reduce the power of the president. The president has been granted far too much power by Congress because they don't want to do their job. I want to force Congress back to doing their job, legislating what they need to do, and I'm going to start by reducing the government by eliminating many of the positions in the plum book. We have to get our bureaucracy under control. Layoffs are coming to Washington. I'm here to bring the layoffs to Washington. We need to end the failed drug war. It has been 50 years, and there are more people doing drugs today than there ever has been before. And the drug war has been a major contributing factor to the south of the border immigration issue that we've had by giving monopolies to cartels, and we need to end that. We need to end the chaos at the border so that people, even south of the border, can have liberty and freedom. And America can lead that by policies that will give liberty and freedom to not only Americans, but all the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now let us return to a more typical debate format. Our first question, we'll start with the opposite end, come down this way, is on the issue of immigration and the border, something, of course, a concern always here in Arizona. The American Bar Association is said to say that immigration law is vast and complex is an understatement. It's commonly compared in level of difficulty to tax law, but with less swearing. The swearing part I added on. Question is, where do you want immigration border policies and laws of the U.S. to land? It's a general question. Feel free to address it with a specificity or general that you would like. Sure. The question is, where do you want immigration and border policies and laws for the United States to land? Where do you want them to be?
Thank you very much. We've had immigration issues since the very beginning of this country. This isn't something new. We had waves of Irish people. We've had waves of Italian people. We've had waves of all different kinds of people coming to America. And every time a new wave came, the people in America were fearful that the new wave was going to steal their jobs and put them out of work and were going to be criminally insane or something like that. And it's funny because each wave then kind of melted away and everybody was angry at the new wave. So my policy on immigration is very simple. We have to streamline the immigration process and make it extremely easy for people to comply and be legal. So I want a work visa, a tourist visa, and an immigration visa. And it should be very simple. It shouldn't take 5 to 10 years to achieve immigration. We need people that are workers. I worked in Silicon Valley. I also work in an area where there's a lot of farm workers. And we need workers to fill jobs. There's a lot of unfilled jobs in America. And as the sheriff was talking about earlier, the numbers just don't bear out the fears that we have. So that we need to embrace our immigrants and open up the doors to America so that we can have a growing population and a growing economy. Free trade is the proper answer to our immigration problems.
Thank you, Mr. Tremont.
Yeah, it's my turn.
Yes.
I'm sorry that Lars got a yellow card there. I wanted you to keep going. I think everything that Lars said was absolutely spot on. I think as a nation we have proven that we can go through any number of waves of immigration and ride out the political backlash. Look, immigration is good for the United States. It's good for America. It is one of those things that defines who we are as a nation. It's one of those things that draws a contrast between us and other major democracies around the world. It's good for us economically. It's good for us even in terms of balance of payments with respect to the government. I know no one really cares about the balance of payments of the government, but a lot of Republicans complain about it, and the truth is that immigration is good for us. It's great to be back in Arizona again. Last time I was here, I was visiting the border, and one of the things that I took, we're all getting yellow carded here. Oh, halfway.
Yeah, you have to keep going.
Oh, well, yeah. Holy cow. Look, one of the things that I learned at the border, talking to the sheriff and local ranchers and a number of other people, CBP, is that our major problem there is a libertarian cause. It is that we have a black market that is trafficking humanity across that border. For this reason, I believe that we need to get our border under control, but to Lars's point, we absolutely need to streamline the pace at which we bring people in legally to cut down on the number of people coming across illegally, which is so dangerous to them.
Mr. Eichenwald.
You know, in a perfectly private property society, which I think we should aim toward, the only borders that would exist would be the borders around your property. There would be no other borders. And so anybody that were to come onto your property would be coming by invitation. Now, we don't live in that society. We live in a society that has so-called public property. Now, that public property is deemed the property of the state, but it's not really the property of the state. Rightfully, it's the property of individuals who pay taxes. So my argument is this. Open borders, while seeming to be the only libertarian position there is not the only libertarian position there is. There is a position that holds that people should be able to immigrate. Absolutely. This is a very liberal policy, but on the basis of an invitation. There is no perfect analog between free trade and immigration. Goods are invited when they're purchased. People, on the other hand, may be uninvited. They have free will and can move on their own. So my argument is this. People should be able to come into this country on a very rational and invited basis, that they are invited by property owners or other people to bring them into the country to work or do whatever they want to do, and they should be held liable, those inviters, for said immigrants. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hornberger.
If there's any issue that defines this race for your nomination, this is it: immigration. I'm the only advocate in this race for completely open borders, abolishing the Border Patrol, abolishing the Immigration Service, all restrictions on the free movements of people. I've been saying this for 30 years. This is the only solution to the morass down there, the death, the suffering. And y'all live here in Arizona. You've seen the death, just like I saw when I grew up on the border in South Texas. And that you've seen the police state, the highway checkpoints, that check your papers. There is no other. I've heard this stuff for 30 years. Oh, we can streamline the system. We can make it work. And all they do is get a bigger police state, which they all support here. Those highway checkpoints, those warrantless searches of ranches and farms. Let's talk straight politics. Where are the votes for this position, for the Libertarian Party presidential candidate? I hear these guys saying, oh, most Americans favor this system. Yeah, that's true, but they're all voting for Trump. They're all voting for DeSantis. They're all voting for Kennedy, who wants to seal the border too. There is a body of people out there that will vote for our principle, that are sick and tired of the death and suffering, but they will only vote for an LP presidential candidate that favors open borders. They will never go to the polls to vote for a pro-immigration control candidate when they can always vote for Trump, DeSantis, Haley, or the rest of that ilk, or Kennedy, if that's what they want.
Mr. Oliver.
So, I've had 2 trips recently that really bring this whole issue really stark into contrast. First, I want to thank Sheriff Hathaway for showing me around the border yesterday. I also toured the border in El Paso recently. I got to see people moving freely across that border as much as possible to try to bring commerce and trade, and that's what we need to facilitate. We need to have a border that is pretty much open. All I ask is that if you come across, you say who you are and that you're not wanted for a crime that requires us to exercise extradition treaties, and then you're not carrying a disease that can make us all extremely sick. Other than that, there should be nothing that stops you from crossing this border if you're a peaceful person. Absolutely nothing. And that streamlines the system to where as many peaceful people that can cross into our system as possible can do so unencumbered with real, and really exercise the market potential of each and every person. Because each and every person does have market potential. As a human being, you have worth, your labor has value, and we should not restrict the ability of capital, goods, or labor to move freely across borders unrestricted, because that is the free market. And there are victims to this immigration policy. We've seen it ourselves, and I saw what looks like the Berlin Wall in Nogales, Arizona, and we need to tear that thing down and support people to be able to freely move across our border. We need an Ellis Island style of immigration system. Come here, declare yourself, and you're good to go. And that includes if you're already here without documentation. And I'll finish with this. If the government can tell you you're illegal because you don't have documentation, you're an immigrant, they can tell you you're illegal when you don't have documentation and you're a native citizen. We cannot give them that control over us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I believe Mr. Reckenwald has signaled he would like to respond. I apologize if it was earlier and I didn't notice. 30 seconds. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, I just want to make clear that there's two issues here. One is what's an ideal situation, and all we're dealing with is a second best solution. The ideal situation is a totally privatized society. We don't want to have a state, and so we don't want to have public property. Therefore, we're looking for the possibility of how do we deal with this. One is a state policy. Both are state policies. Anything that the state does is a state policy. So the question comes down to how do we deal with it? And I say restitution to the people that own public property. Thank you.
And Mr. Hornberger would like to respond to that.
Yeah, let me add to Michael's position that he didn't quite expand upon. He favors expanding Donald Trump's Berlin Wall down there on the border. He favors excluding every illegal immigrant from this country with a reign of terror that is unimaginable. We're dealing with real life situation here. People are dying. I've seen them. They're crossing the Rio Grande. You've seen them on the deserts here. We're dealing with a real life situation of people dying and a police state. And that's what he favors, and I oppose.
All right, I believe as part of the rules when one client mentions one, but we can't have this go on ad infinitum unless it be a 7-hour debate.
I don't favor such things. And let me just say this. The policy that I'm talking about is actually very liberal. It actually would allow a lot more people to come to the country on a rational, invited basis. There's nothing draconian or evil or wicked about it. It is not about increasing the size of the state, but tell me that the state isn't increased with all the public services that have to be dealt with when people come here without anybody backing them, no insurance, no liability. It comes down on the taxpayer every time.
Thank you. One thing I might want to caution, it wasn't announced before. I know everyone appreciates the applause, but when we add up all the applause at the end, it's going to make this probably go a lot longer than we'd want. Okay, let's go to our next topic, foreign aid and the troops. We all know the quote from George Washington, to steer clear of permanent alliances. Not many presidents have paid heed to that, or foreign alliances, excuse me, not many presidents have paid heed to that. The current zeitgeist is filled with discussions of U.S. aid and conflicts in Ukraine and Israel. This aid can take the form of money, weapons, and the men and women of the U.S. Armed Forces. This next question is twofold. We'll begin with Mr. Hornberger and take it down that way. The question is, at what point do you think aid is justified to another country, and at what point do you think sending troops is justified? Wait, have I?
The answer is there is no point of sending foreign aid to any foreign country in any vehicle whatsoever, and the only justifiable war is a self-defense war. But, you know, it's easy. Libertarian Party presidential candidates had long opposed foreign aid and foreign interventionism. I think we all stand in that area. It doesn't get to the root of the problem. The case that we have to make to the American people is the root of the problem, dismantling the national security state. This was the worst mistake in American history. And it frustrates me that LP presidential candidates had never made this case, because this is the cause of the problem. You've got the Pentagon, the CIA, the NSA. There's a great law professor named Michael Glennon from Tufts University that has written a great book I highly recommend called National Security and Double Government. He says the national security branch of the government is running the federal government, and I have no doubts that he's true, that he's right. So we can't just talk in terms to our fellow Americans of ending foreign interventionism. We got to pull that weed out by its root, and that means restoring a limited government republic with just a basic military force, which was our founding governmental system and the best governmental system, I think, in the history of this country.
Mr. Rechtenwald?
Yes, I agree with Jacob, and I say we cut all foreign aid, military aid, and arming of all countries, including Israel, Ukraine, Taiwan, you name it. All of this should be cut immediately. This is an outrage that the United States is funding and arming rampages like they're taking place in the Gaza Strip. It's just unconscionable that we're paying to have people slaughtered on a regular basis. Now, how do we stop it? The Federal Reserve is what allows this to happen. The printing, the unfettered printing or creation of money out of thin air is what funds these the military-industrial complex to continue this unfettered and unmitigated disaster that we have in foreign policy. Thank you.
Mr. Tamat.
Thanks very much. Both these guys have got it right, and I do have to stand up for the great Harry Browne. We have had presidential candidates in the past who have advocated for tearing down the military-industrial complex. It is one of the root causes of our problem, and Michael is exactly right. We do need to, what do you guys say, end the Fed? Yeah. It's time that we end the Federal Reserve System, because it is one of those things that allows the expansion of the government generally. And be it unfortunate, our government takes that as an opportunity to do all kinds of crazy things in your name around the world. We do need to stop propping up other powers around the world for a variety of reasons. One of which is, and we don't talk about this in my view quite enough, which is it is a fundamentally unethical proposition to go to a family in Arizona or Iowa or anywhere else that is struggling to make ends meet and take money away from them forcibly, right? And use it to project power abroad in ways that does not even pretend to align with the values of those families. The other problem, of course, is a practical one. We end up in situations like we have in the Middle East today, which is that we are held accountable in some sense for the policies of our ostensible allies. This is a big problem. Those nations deserve an independent policy, and so do we.
Thank you. Mr. Mapstead.
$34 trillion in debt. And somehow Congress has figured out that we should send money to other countries before taking care of the people at home. Unbelievable. We need to end this endless printing of money, endless borrowing of money by ending the Federal Reserve, abolishing the CIA, and getting rid of our military-industrial complex overseas. We continue to create problems over and over again, and the American people are lied to over and over again for the reasons why we are sending money overseas, and it is not in the best interest of the American people to continue all of these foreign wars. We create more problems than we ever solve by going over there. We create more animosity and more hatred towards Americans, and then gets us into an endless loop of warmongering and of killing people. I am sick and tired of my tax dollars buying missiles and bombs to drop on kids in some foreign land. It is disgusting, and I'm tired of it. And I will end that as President of the United States.
Thank you. Mr. Oliver.
So I think a lot of what everybody has just said is something I can very much agree with, so I want to explain where my position comes from. I started in politics to oppose war because I saw friends of mine getting to go sit to fight and die and be injured in wars that we were based on lies that our government was telling us. They tried to expand the security state both at home and abroad using 9/11 as an excuse, and that's what got me passionate into politics. And that's what we have to oppose. We have to fight for a peace-based foreign policy. We have to speak to the value of diplomacy. And you know, we've had presidential candidates in the past say things like, we're going to close Gitmo, we're going to end the wars, we're going to stop the drones, and we're going to actually talk to our enemies using diplomacy as a tool. That presidential candidate actually got elected. His name was Barack Obama, and he lied about every single promise he made. And that pushed me out of the two-party system and right into the hands of the Libertarian Party. And I was welcome in because this is the real anti-war party in this country. And when we talk about foreign aid, when we talk about cutting foreign aid, the slander against us is that we don't care about people in other countries. But the truth is if you want to help spur the development of economic development in the developing world, you're better off spending your money doing microloans and helping put that money directly into the marketplace as opposed to handing it to a federal government that's going to parse it out based on who gives them bribes and favors, because that's what federal aid, or that's what foreign aid does, and we need to stop this practice. It's immoral, and it perpetuates us trying to control the world via aid and via the bullet and the bomb, and that is not the way for us to be a good neighbor to our international friends. We need to be based on diplomacy, and I make you this promise right now. If I get on the debate stage, you're going to have a candidate who's valued by the war on terror and not old Cold War 20th century policies, and that's what we need. Thank you.
Thank you. So far, you all have been in very much agreement on a lot of these issues, which is wonderful for the party, but it's ticking me off as the moderator. I've given tomatoes to some of you. Get them ready. This may be the time. Actually, tomatoes, not canned tomatoes. Actually, I think this next part may show a few differences. This next question. Here's the next round. Each of you will have the opportunity to ask a question of one of the other candidates. You have 30 seconds to ask the question. They'll have a minute to respond, and then you'll have half a minute to respond to them. When you ask the question, please say the candidate's name. Begin with that, whoever you're asking, so they can get in the game, so to speak. Know to focus that it's their turn. All right, Mr. Rechtenwald, would you start us off with that?
Sure. I'd like to direct this question to Jacob Hornberger. I'd like to ask Jacob, do you believe that if that taxation is theft? And if so, why are you a minarchist and not an anarcho-capitalist or an anarchist like me? As a minarchist, you want to maintain public property, which means the state will continue to expropriate wealth from taxpayers to maintain it. You want to maintain that public system, yet give taxpayers no say in what happens with that public property.
You got a minute.
Well, Michael, the premise behind the assumption behind your question is incorrect. I'm a minarchist that believes in limited government, voluntarily funded. And I've written a long series on this. I don't support taxation. Taxation is theft. That's why I oppose Lars, the centerpiece of his campaign, where he calls for an 18 to 23% sales tax on the poorest people in this country. But I should also say, Michael, that you call yourself an anarchist, but you're the strangest anarchist I've ever seen, because you support the immigration police state along the border. You force this, you love this giant border patrol and apparatus on the border that results in death, suffering, highway checkpoints, warrantless searches of farms and ranches, and you favor state government control over people. The anarchists I know oppose all government, but you favor partial government. Partial anarchy? Who in the world is going to vote for that kind of message as a presidential candidate?
Your response to this.
Listen, I favor total privatization. Absolutely no state at all. Okay, but in the lieu of that, which we don't have, and we're unlikely to get to it anytime soon, it's kind of like an asymptote to which we aspire, which likely we won't reach in our lifetimes. But let me just say, short of that, we do have a problem. We still have a state. And having a state, it is going to claim certain things like property, like the right to who can handle that property, who can access that property. And I say that should be done to favor the people that are paying for it or being robbed for it. Thank you.
Thanks. Now, Mr. Mapstead, you were cited in the answer to the question. Would you like to respond?
Yeah, so what I'm proposing is abolishing the IRS. He's talking about the fair tax. It's something that's been around for 20 years. It's a bill before Congress. I loathe the IRS. I hate the coercion that the IRS is, and I hate that it makes regular citizens be criminals. And so I want to abolish the damn IRS so that we can all have a more fair and transparent and easy to understand system that eliminates all the loopholes and helps regular citizens achieve financial victory.
All right, let's go to Mr. Oliver next. Who would you like to interrogate in good cop, bad cop fashion?
So, Dr. Rechtenwald, as about 7 months ago, while I was traveling around the country running for the Libertarian nomination for president, you had wrote an article saying that Donald Trump is the only safe port in a storm for voters to go to. You were recently a Republican. You were a Trump supporter last time around. My question for you is, what has changed here, and why should Libertarians trust you with our party's standard bearer when folks in Arizona know exactly what it feels like to have a Senate candidate drop out when they really need to be earning votes of Libertarians? So I'm asking, what makes you think that you should have the nomination as opposed to people who've been in the party for years?
Well, that premise of the question is false. I never said that Donald Trump was the solution to anything. I said something about if a Republican were elected, what they might do, not what Donald Trump would do. So that's just a false premise. I have been arguing a lot of things in many different outlets. I reach probably hundreds of thousands of times more people than anybody on this stage with my message, and I've never said that Donald Trump is the answer at all. So, look, one time I voted for Trump in 2016 as an FU vote to the establishment. After that, I had nothing further to do with him, and that's the fact.
Happy to show you the quote after the debate so you can remember what you said.
Okay. You both mentioned Donald Trump. He is not here, so I won't give him a chance to respond. Look!
Show up the debates anyway.
He doesn't do debates. Okay.
Oh, can I add something? Furthermore, one thing is that people don't understand is that my Twitter account was not my Twitter account only a few months ago. That account I took over from somebody else because mine got shut down for censorship because I was the one on this stage saying things that the regime actually fears. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, I believe Mr. Hornberger. Who would you like to ask, and what is your question?
Well, Michael Rechtenwald, this will be the easiest question you've ever answered in your life. There are 2 articles in Chronicles magazine that I'm going to read excerpts of, and my only question to you is, did you write these things that are authored by Michael Rechtenwald? Quote, following is a partial list of actions that a Republican president could take by executive order by reversing the damage. Close the border by completing the border wall and expelling illegal immigrants. If California wants an open border with Mexico, it would be free to allow unfettered immigration, but Idaho would be entitled to close its borders to uninvited immigrants.
First of all, it says what a Republican president might do, not what I would do. I'm not running as a Republican, I'm running as a Libertarian. That was not a statement about what I would do. That was a statement about what a Republican might do. There's only one part of it that has any truth to it in the sense of what I hold, and that is the immigration issue should finally come down to the local level. And that is, people should be able to determine who can come into their locality. Because if, say, I have a public pool, okay, and I want to have, I paid taxes for that pool, and people want to swim there. Okay, so you're saying that anybody from any locality who haven't paid taxes can come and swim in that pool, basically destroying its use value for everybody else. That is exactly what you're suggesting. I'm suggesting that as long as the state holds property that they stole from us, we should have the right to determine what's done with it. And I say that can be done through an invitation basis.
I believe you.
Go Google Chronicles magazine and you'll see that he was counseling the Republican Party as to what they should do. Close the border by completing the border wall and expelling illegal immigrants. And notice the system he favors. State border controls, local border controls. You see the police state along the southern border? He wants that for every state. He wants every state to have those same kind of controls. We're looking at a massive police state all across this country run by 50 state governments. Who's gonna vote for that message?
Thank you. Mr. Mapstead, who would you like to question, and what is your question?
Sure. Well, this question could actually go to anybody, but I'll throw it to Chase Oliver. I recently announced a Voters' Bill of Rights, a piece of policy that my team has been working on for the last 6 months, including Larry Sharp and Daniel Johnson and Mr. Tyler Harris. And we've launched this Voters' Bill of Rights to level the playing field so that all candidates can get on any ballot across the nation with equal access to the candidacy. So my question is, Mr. Oliver, and to the other candidates, would you back my Voters' Bill of Rights as a piece of policy?
Well, I actually think, you mentioned a lot of great folks that are involved. I haven't seen the entire plan in its entirety, but what I can say is this. If it's about making it easier for people to get on the ballot, easier for people to vote, and easier for people to be represented, it's something that I would absolutely support. And if I happen to be the nominee, I'm happy to take that policy along with some great ideas from all the other folks on stage so we can represent the Libertarian Party as a whole. And I support the right to have more people be on the ballot, to be not challenged by the state arbitrarily to seek to serve. And I think anything we can do to make it easier to challenge the old two-party system, their old ideas, are probably good ones. So I imagine yours would be also great as well. So I look forward to learning about it in its entirety, and I think we would all probably support it, and good on you for putting it together, sir.
Look, it's quite inappropriate for me to jump in here, but I've seen this thing. It's really good. Tyler Harris is a very, very smart guy out in Virginia. A lot of you know him from past lives. What's that?
I said I endorse that as well.
Yeah, Tyler's a great guy. Larry Sharp, you guys all know Larry, great guy. You probably know them better than you know Lars. But the thing that they have put together is really smart. I think it needs some political work, like how do we get there, right? But it's spot damned on.
Jumping in to say kind things. This is truly a moderator's greatest nightmare. Good Lord, it's the non-aggression principle. It doesn't have to be a lifestyle, for Pete's sake. Jeez. All right, well, it's Mr. Termont. Who would you like to ask a question to? And what question would you like that to be, sir?
I'm in trouble here because I was actually going to ask Lars to explain his Bill of Rights. Yeah,
Can I get a flight to Iowa?
That's the best thing I got. That's it is truly, I think, the one big thing. I got some stuff I got to talk about that are announcements for my campaign, but no one's going to ask me, so I'm screwed there. But it is the one thing that I think you all need to hear about that is at all newsworthy. So, Lars, why don't you tell us a little bit about the Bill of Rights?
Thank you so much. So besides ballot access, we have crafted not legislation, but policy that will bring transparency and fairness and integrity back to our system. We allow for voter rolls to be audited and independent auditors, so it's not just the Republicans and Democrats guarding the hen house, because we all know that they rigged the system against us. So it allows any citizen to audit the vote. It opens the source code for all the machines out there, and it prints a paper receipt for all votes that you have. So you can go to your website and look at the two things and make sure that they match up so that make sure that your vote is counted and proper. And it allows for people to access the vote better, and it doesn't require any fees for ID or documentation needed to vote. And it makes it so that all citizens who are felons and have served their time can be voting again as a member of society.
Now that I've heard it endorsed. It's good. I told you. I told you.
Okay. All right. I feel like I'm hosting an Osmond special or something. No, kudos. I'm glad we're getting it. You know, I'm going to exercise a little moderator's prerogative here. I've always heard Gene Epstein say that. I've always wanted to do it. Because unfortunately, Josh Smith wasn't able to make it because of weather, we have a little bit more time. Would you like to do that segment again? Do you have, by show of hands, you have another question you'd like to ask someone? If you don't, we could move on. If not, I'm kind of doing this on the fly.
Oh, a quick plug for Joshua Smith. He is stuck because of the snow, not because
yes, because of weather.
Yeah, not because he thinks you people are all worthless. All right. Now I'm not saying he doesn't think that, right?
That's what I'm looking for.
No.
Thank you.
Josh Smith is good people. He is stuck, and he wanted to be here.
Sure.
No.
No, I know he is.
I have it firsthand.
Horrendous weather.
He told me to say that. No. His podcast is worth checking out, and you guys ought to do so, especially tomorrow's version, because I spent how much? I had to outbid a couple of you jerks. $275, I think it was $275.
Jerks. That's what I want. More of that.
More what?
Call people jerks.
No, because they made me spend more money than I wanted to make, not because they're actually jerks. I'm just a cheap son of a bitch. We had an auction, and Josh said he was going to auction off a chance to appear on his podcast. And Chase and I had to bid, and then someone else in the room was bidding against us. So for like $275 as a donation to the South Carolina Libertarian Party, I won the chance to be on Josh's podcast, which is really weird because he's in Des Moines, right? And I'm in Virginia. The good news is I'll be in Des Moines tomorrow. The bad news is it's damn cold. And now I have to go back to Josh's house and do this podcast, which I'm really looking forward to. But that's a long-winded way of saying check out Josh's podcast. And Josh is actually a good guy. He's just stuck because of the weather.
For Josh. Oh, he has a podcast. The Libertarians have podcast. I wasn't aware of that. They have podcast. Okay, moving to the next round. This is the another round of solid kindness. This is the lightning round. It's really designed for quick responses. By the way, could we give a round of applause to our timers here? Yeoman's work. I could not do that because my attention span is like that. Couldn't do that. So, see, you call me the timers jerks, but not each other. Not each other. Okay. So, because this being the lightning round and we have some extra time, you don't have to be as lightning. You know, it's like it's lightning, but maybe you didn't pay the electric bill, so it's slow in getting there. Yeah. You know, it's the mudslide round. We'll call it the mudslide round. Okay, the first one. This is the moment of silence. The Rick Perry question.
All of them.
Oh yes, thank.
If he had just said all of them.
Please.
Oh, sorry.
I got the big lectern, pal.
Competing for comedians.
If you remember in, I think it was 2011, he said there were 3 agencies I would eliminate, and he could think of 2, and he couldn't think of the 3rd one. But and I know most people remember that who saw it, but what always stuck up in my mind was he turns to Dr. Paul, who suggests one for him. And so, you know, Ron Paul, Mr. Nice, he says, the EPA? I mean, he's throwing the guy a lifesaver, you know, to save him drowning. And Rick Perry goes, no, that wasn't the one. I'm like, at this point, when you could only think of two, someone's giving you a third, you say, yeah, that's the one. You take, yes, any port in a storm. That's the one you take. But then his campaign went, you know, it just disappeared after that. So this is the Rick Perry question. What are the first three departments, agencies, whatever you want to call it, that you would abolish? And Ron Paul will not be here to help you. So you're on your own. Let's start with Lars.
I would go with IRS, the Federal Reserve, and the DEA.
All right, let's go down the line. Next one.
That's really good. I would start, I'm sorry, what was how many?
Three.
I'm kidding. Okay. I think the FBI is worth mentioning because I think that Americans would find it a lot easier to live without the FBI, and it would be actually politically a lot easier to sunset the FBI by breaking it into pieces than most people realize. So I always put that on the list. Obviously, we want to end the Fed and as rapidly as possible. That one's a bit challenging. I think it needs to go at the top of the list, but because it would take several steps and a few years, it's not so easy. For that reason, you got to put something else on the list that is easier, and I would add, besides these three are really good, the Department of Education, because the way that it operates through these block grants is arguably, I'm not sure stupider is actually a word, but it is stupider than the way that the other agencies work, and I think for that reason, for no other reason, just as an example that stupidity's got to go, I would put that on the list.
So I would say the IRS, the CIA, and the FBI. The Federal Reserve can't be just stricken like that. It has to go through Congress. But I would actually float a bill that would get rid of the Federal Reserve. I would put into circulation a bill, first of all, that would get rid of legal tender laws immediately, but also float a bill that would actually ask me to sign to get rid of the Federal Reserve. That is the big monster. These other agencies could not exist without it.
The way I figure it is that when government programs are producing death of innocent people, those programs have to zoom to the top. And so the CIA, which is undoubtedly the most evil agency in the history of this country, the Pentagon, which has wreaked untold millions of deaths around the world, and the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, which continues to produce the deaths of thousands of innocent people along our border. Those are my top three.
So I think if you want to peel an onion, you start with the outermost layer, and the most recent federal department we created was the Department of Homeland Security, which would do away with ICE, TSA, and a whole lot of other programs. Let's just do away with the DHS altogether. Anything that's relevant that we need can go into DOD or into the Department of Justice, which a lot of that isn't relevant. The other two things I would seek to eliminate is we've seen how bad COVID is with public education, so let's kill the public education monster once and for all by eliminating the federal Department of Education and joining with millions of people around the country who are already making that a priority. And lastly, I would say let's eliminate the IRS because taxation is theft. Let's get it the heck out of our hands. Quit having so many agents having so much control over our lives and the violence that comes with that. So let's starve the state of tax funds. Let's get rid of the indoctrination, and let's quit with the national security state that's existed since 9/11.
All right, thank you. Let's throw this one in. Okay, I'm sure non-libertarians of the audience would wonder, well, some of those, not in this audience, but that audience. Well, you've eliminated such and such of agency. They do things that we need those things. How do, and you can pick the agency that you said to limit. I mean, the IRS would be kind of an easy one. But what are you going to do instead of, or what happens when that agency, that department is gone? What fills in the blank of what they did and the results that they achieved? We'll start.
Okay. So the first two that I said, the IRS and the Federal Reserve, those were created in 1913. We worked perfectly fine before 1913 without these crappy agencies, and they can just go, be done with it, right? And the CIA is just a corrupt organization that, as others have said, it brings terror to people around the world, and we need to end that agency. All these systems are rigged, and I would also be getting rid of everybody on the plum book. The plum book is a list of 7,000 positions that the president gets to fill, and he doesn't have to fill them. So this would be the first way that I would bring mass layoffs to Washington, because all of those positions also have teams of people underneath them. So by removing the plum book people, we can get rid of that. And if Congress decides that I got rid of something that they really need, they can make a law to re-put that in. But right now, we need to get rid of the power of president. We need to reduce the power of president and return that power to Congress so they can do their damn job.
Yeah, response to that from Joe, non-libertarian kind of question. Okay, well, how do we pay for government stuff then if the IRS isn't there anymore?
Yeah, so that's why I proposed the fair tax. The fair tax still is revenue neutral. It brings in the same amount of revenue, but it's not coercive. You have a voluntary ability to pay taxes or not pay taxes. If you don't want to pay taxes, you can spend less money, right? You can buy used goods. So there's a bunch of ways around it, and it just levels the playing field so we're not making regular people criminals anymore. It shouldn't be that the government turns regular citizens into criminals because they didn't file a piece of paper right, or they overlooked something, or they didn't get a piece of paper that they were supposed to. I want to end making citizens criminals by abolishing the IRS.
Mr. Tamat.
Yeah, I like that. I like getting rid of the IRS. Anyone who's ever been audited, as I have, knows that that's a really weird experience. You are presumed guilty until you can prove yourself innocent, and they have their own courts. I know I'm looking at the sheriff here. That would be weird if you could control your own courts, huh? In my book, the sales tax is not a perfect silver bullet, of course, and perhaps there is no perfect silver bullet, but my idea is to force the federal government to the extent to which it needs money. And I think we would all argue that that's got to be pretty damn small, right? But to the extent to which it can make an argument that it needs money, it should be going to the state legislatures for it. I don't believe that having a direct relationship between the federal government as us as individuals to collect revenue is at all appropriate. I don't think it's what was envisioned when the nation was put together, and I don't think it's an appropriate relationship today. Regarding the other agencies I mentioned the Department of Education because it's actually not true. Your premise was people would miss it or it does something useful.
Well, that was the premise of the question.
Yeah,
not
exactly.
So much my question.
I didn't mean that you would argue that, right? Although if you do argue that, we should probably have dinner together and talk that through. The Department of Education doesn't actually do anything that anybody would miss. And to Lars's point, many of the things that we need to allow people to realize is that these agencies don't do anything that you would miss, and you can take care of your lives perfectly well at the local level. School boards, for example, can make school policy without a federal agency shoving it down your throat. We talked about the Fed, yes, and then the other one was the FBI. I think that one of the reasons people would not miss the FBI is because you can break it into pieces. There are plenty of state and local agencies. The sheriff, you don't need a federal government agency to help you fight crime in your county, and nor does any other sheriff. So that's actually easily sunset, and nobody would miss it.
Yeah, I mean, the CIA is certainly nothing, there's nothing that they do that we would need, and so there's no need to replace this outrageously evil institution and their coups in other countries, their MK Ultra programs, their other outrageous projects that they've undertaken, basically oppressors of the people, not only in the United States but around the world. So get rid of them without any qualms. The FBI, I agree with Mike. Basically, this is taken care of at the local and state level. You don't need the FBI, and certainly it is a corrupt institution, but I don't think it can be fixed, so I'd get rid of it. In terms of the IRS, I don't believe you replace the income tax with a flat sales tax. This actually hurts the poor or the lower class more than anybody. 20%, say, for example, is a lot more out of the paycheck of a poor person than it is out of a very wealthy person. So I don't believe the flat sales tax is fair or right. And as Murray Rothbard said, you don't replace one tax with another. That's not how you dismantle the state. Thank you.
Mr. Hornberger?
Yeah, as I indicated in my inaugural address, Martin Luther King pointed out this is the greatest purveyor of violence in the world, and it is. And if you dismantle the national security state and you restore our founding system of a limited government republic. Now you've got peace and harmony with the people of the world. If you open up the borders, you get rid of the customs and enforcement, immigration enforcement. Now you've got America leading the world in terms of economic exchanges, harmonies between people. And let me say something about this tax issue, because to run a presidential candidate that says, let's get rid of the income tax, which is great, I'm all in favor of that, but to be replaced by a sales tax, what does that tell the poor people in this country? It says, we're going to help the rich. Yeah, they'll love that. Republicans would love that. But we're going to put the burden of this welfare warfare state on you with this regressive tax. We can get rid of the income tax. We can get rid of all these government programs without replacing it with anything. And finally, I should point out that everybody on this stage in South Carolina in the debate favored continuing Social Security for the next 25 years, for the next generation. That's like $30 trillion in unfunded liabilities. And they want to abolish the IRS? Who's going to fund their Social Security checks except the IRS? That's the contradiction that cannot generate votes from the American people.
But before, to Mr. Oliver, Mr. Mapstead wanted to give a response.
Thank you. So several people have called out the fair tax, and what I want to tell you is that if you are making under $40,000 under the fair tax, you don't pay any tax because there's a prebate built in. There's a lot of things that these guys don't understand about it. Look, my ideal is zero taxation. That's my North Star, that's where I want to get to. But if you ask me, can you choose between having an IRS or abolishing the IRS and having a sales tax? I pick abolishing the IRS all day long. I'm a practical libertarian. We have to march toward the North Star. We don't instantly teleport to it. We have to work with Congress. This is a bill that's before Congress. It's the most opportunity we have to abolish the IRS, and that's why I favor it. After that, we'll start reducing the taxes and we'll start reducing the spending to get us down to our North Star of zero taxes and zero spending, as close to limited government as we can possibly get.
Thank you. Mr. Oliver.
So I just want to remind us back to the original premise of our question, which is you want to eliminate these things, but who will do these things? And as libertarians, this is a question we get quite often. We also get the slander oftentimes that we don't care about people, that we don't want to help people, that we're selfish. And this is something we have to overcome by explaining that just because we don't want the state to do something doesn't mean we don't want people to do something. And that's regards with helping the poor, helping those who are in need. We can facilitate over time and quickly, very quickly, the ability for people to help one another. And just because I don't want the state to do something doesn't mean that I don't think it's a good idea. I want people to be able to have prosperity. I want people to be able to have opportunity. I want people to be able to do the things they want to do. But it doesn't come from centrally planned state solutions. It will never come from central planning. The better thing, instead of trusting a few hundred central planners in Washington, D.C., called the United States Congress, shouldn't we trust the trillions and trillions of individual decisions that each of us make every day? That is not selfish. That is empathic. That is loving. And that is a slander we as libertarians, and I as our presidential candidate, will seek to overcome. Because you're right, we're asked this question all the time. Well, what are you going to do? Who's going to build the roads? Who will take care of the poor people? Who will do this? Who will do that? We will do that. We do not need a state apparatus to make that happen. And so that's my answer with regards to just about any policy that is coming out of our government. We, the people, can do it better than they, the state. And that's something we have to push in every form of policy throughout this campaign in 2024. And if I'm our nominee, I will shout it to the rooftops.
Thank you, sir. And, oh, yes. Okay. I'm sorry. Forgive me.
Let me take my friend Chase here to task now. I agree with everything he just said. But why can't he apply it to Social Security? At the South Carolina debate, I was the only one that said, get rid of this program immediately. I said it today in my inaugural address. That means freedom works. You can rely on the free market. You can rely on voluntary charitable hearts of the American people. You don't need the coercive apparatus. You don't need to continue this socialist program for one day. At South Carolina, Chase and every one of them said, no, you have to continue this coercive apparatus for the next generation. It's a contract. So he advocates the initiation of force for the next 25 years. Who's going to vote for that kind of message? The initiation of force from a party that stands against the initiation of force and the pledge that all of us take. We have to communicate that freedom works, that we believe in freedom. And that means the immediate eradication of socialism with no delay whatsoever because of the very things he just finished saying.
So I want to respond to that really quickly. So no, I don't want to expand Social Security for the next generation. I want Social Security to be the last generation of anybody that has to go through this program. But the reality of it is that right now is the average millennial doesn't even have $1,000 in savings. And the healthcare costs are expensive. All the cost of living has gone through the roof. And so what we have to do is we have to allow those who are currently living on the program to be able to retire. And eventually, yes, as time moves forward, they will die. And we will not replace that with any new beneficiaries. But I can tell you right now, I speak to millennials all over the country. If I were to tell them today, if we eliminated all of the help, all of the Social Security and everything, would you be able to afford your parents' medical bills and their cost of living tomorrow? Not a one of them can say yes. Those things have to take time to form. We have to move ourselves from one place to the other. And that path work, there's a transition there. And let me just say this right now. We will never, ever get the support to just eliminate it outright because so many Americans have spent decades paying into it and they feel they're worth it. Now, I'm 40 years old. I'm not getting those benefits back. I'm never getting those benefits, whether I pay into the system or not. And so the responsible way to end Social Security is let those who are living on the benefits now retire on those benefits, as my parents are and as many of our parents and grandparents are. But for younger workers like myself, quit taxing me for Social Security benefits I will never get. Let that go and let me put that money into a mutual fund or any other financial services so I can retire. Something my parents were not afforded the ability to do because they were taxed for Social Security their entire lives. So they missed out on that bit of wealth to be able to invest if they wanted to. So afford me and everyone else who's younger the opportunity to be able to retire for themselves, but don't hamper our parents and grandparents.
All right, we have one more response to that, and that will wrap up this question in what was once a lightning round.
I just want to speak to I want to speak to this issue of Social Security. Okay, so Jake would have us basically the state has been robbing people for their entire lives. Okay, so it's been taking this money from them, but now he wants it to rob them again. I say, yes, we could end Social Security. Every dollar that you've paid in, you should be able to get out immediately with interest and accounting for inflation. That is the only fair way to end it. Pay the people back. They have been robbed for Social Security. You can't just say, oh, I'm sorry, you paid all this money, we're keeping it, you're done. That's ridiculous. It's theft, it's double theft.
30 seconds, please.
He mentioned my name. He said people. He said the word people. Lars and I are people.
One question to Michael. This is the most...
No. One statement from you.
One statement.
Not a question. We're trying to get it moving.
If every single person who has paid FICA taxes through his entire life is going to be refunded the money from the federal government, where is the federal government going to get the money to pay those refunds?
It's going to collapse, and that's good. That's what we want. We want to dismantle it. So, yes, you're going to have to cut a lot of stuff in order to pay this back. That's exactly what we want.
It comes from taxation. They will tax me $20,000 to refund me my $20,000.
All right, gentlemen, the bar's closing. Our next lightning question, timekeepers, I praised you, then I let you have a break, the biggest mistake of my debate moderator life. I apologize. 30 seconds for these responses in the now back at it lightning round. What is one specific action you would take to protect Second Amendment rights? Start with you, Mr. Oliver.
I would seek to undo any current gun legislation and restrictions that exist. I believe you should be able to have a right to bear arms. It says shall not be infringed, and we need to make our federal policy in line with the Constitution. And so to that end, I say let you have any kind of gun you want. As long as you're not shooting it at somebody in violence, I don't care, and I'll see you at the range.
Mr. Hornberger.
Gun rights are a linchpin of a free society. Abolish all restrictions on the freedom of people to own weapons whatsoever.
Yeah, I have to agree entirely with Jacob on this. Thank you.
Where was that brevity earlier? Where was that brevity earlier in the... Never mind, sorry.
Well, look, obviously the federal government needs to stand down in terms of restrictions, but that's not sufficient by half. A lot of our problems are at the state level, of course, and increasingly, and weirdly, in certain locales. What we need is for the federal government to actually be a bit more muscular here in terms of protecting our rights. We need the government at the federal level to be suing to protect our rights from the individual states who are putting restrictions on the Second Amendment.
Mr. Mapstead.
I live in California. They hate guns in California. There shall be no federal gun laws under the Lars Mapstead presidency. The only federal gun law that should exist is the Second Amendment, and we should be protecting the Second Amendment when the states infringe upon us. My governor is trying his best to defeat the Second Amendment. He wants to propose a new amendment to the Constitution to limit your rights to gun ownership. Never elect Gavin Newsom to president.
Hi. You guys can do 30-second answers. Wow, we're growing. Okay. So, I know. We're going to make it, well, you know, baby steps. Let's do a minute for this next question. It comes to me, actually I sought a few friends for suggestions for this part of the debate. My good friend Mike Meharry from the 10th Amendment Center suggested this question, and we will start with Mr. Mapstead. What is one specific action you would take to return power back to the states?
Wow. Well, I think, you know, I'm totally for the 10th Amendment and states' rights, and I prefer states' rights over federal rights as often as possible. The restoring a 10th Amendment right, I'm sort of at a loss right now, but I definitely prefer states' rights over federal rights, and very rarely do I see any reason for the federal government to have any imposition over the states, that the federal government should be as limited as possible, that we should not have nearly as many laws as we have. The states can take care of the issues that they have much better, because local is much better than national. National doesn't understand what's going on in each state, and different people live in different states and they have different ideas how they want to be governed. And so we should allow those people to be governed the way that they want to be governed and not force them with government coercion at the national level.
Well, sure.
Yeah, so I think we need to kind of lead by example here. As the president, you would be the employer and in charge of executing all laws, and I would direct all of my cabinet heads and all of their secretaries and undersecretaries to this simple thing. If it's not in the Constitution, it's not your job and you don't need to do it. Just like Andrew Jackson said, let them enforce it. It's not our job to be doing unconstitutional work as President of the United States and as the executive branch of government. So I would take that off of the plates of each of my employees and tell them to only be doing work that falls within the Constitution and the constitutional restraint that exists for the executive branch of the government. And if they don't do it, well, I know a president said this in the past, but you're fired. And that's all you have to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tremont.
Thanks. I need to give one of my websites a plug here, goldnewdeal.org. Don't go to goldnewdeal.com because you'll get something really weird, I hear. But go to goldnewdeal.org. It's the name of the platform that my campaign is based on, and the flagship is a 10th Amendment idea, which is to say that states need a constitutional vehicle to opt out of federal supremacy and to opt into the ability to resolve conflicts between state law and federal law unilaterally, indeed in state court. Even more specifically, one of the things that we don't talk much about is the regulatory apparatus at the federal level. And one specific thing you can do, in answer to your question, one specific thing you can do is the president could make the great bulk of federal regulation subject to the approval of governors in individual states, which would dump it into their laps, and you would find, not 50, because we got a weird guy in California, but you'd find some governors who would stop this mess.
Hi, Mr. Hornberger.
Yeah, I really hate the phrase states' rights. I don't believe states have rights. I think individuals have rights. And I think the case that we have to make to the American people as a presidential candidate is how do we restore sovereignty to the individual in every state. And I think the best way to do that is abolish the income tax. You know, when people were free, Americans were free of income taxation for more than 100 years. They were sovereign. They were supreme. The government really was the servant. Once that got inverted in 1913, the citizen became the servant, the serf. The government became the master. And that's the case we need to make in our presidential campaigns, restoring sovereignty to the American people as individuals.
Dr. Reichenwald.
Yes. So I think that the one thing that the president could do to restore power to people at the local level would be to abolish the legal tender laws, which will allow for alternate parallel currencies to flourish in various localities and across networks. So we need to, in lieu of finally ending the Fed, we need to abolish legal tender laws that end the Fed's monopoly on money. And that would go a long way to creating the option for parallel currencies, Bitcoin, gold, whatever. I'm not going to adjudicate which ones are best. That's up to the people who use them. So that's what I would do.
Thank you. All right, this next question, timers, get ready. This is a 5-second one. It's yes or no. Simple as that. Would you free Ross Ulbricht?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
He'll be at the inaugural ball.
Okay. Next question. We'll return back to our minute. Who is the first foreign leader you would invite to the U.S. and why? Well, let's start with you and take it down that way.
I think we're all going to answer Javier Milei, I believe, of Argentina, and it's because we finally have an elected libertarian in the world, and no longer do we have that as our stump question when the mass media goes, well, who's the world leader you respect the most? That stumped Gary Johnson. I don't think it will stump whoever our libertarian nominee, and it certainly won't stump me.
I believe he was elected president of Aleppo.
Excuse me, what is that?
Aleppo, that is the appropriate, yes, what is that? Sorry.
Yes, Javier Milei, and I speak Spanish, so we could have a good discussion in his language.
Is that the same answer for everyone?
I imagine we're all saying
Where-
Milei,
where-
right?
yeah.
Well,
There are no wrong answers, but
I can think of a few wrong answers, actually.
well, I'm just trying to stir
I'm
it
not
up.
going to
Stir it
offer
up.
them right now. Milei is someone that for whom we have high expectations. I think it's important for us to hold him accountable. He has a big opportunity, and we're all sort of waiting to see him deliver. He's off to a fast start, obviously. As you may know, I need to plug something here because Lars and I haven't gotten enough time, so I'm going to plug something. I put together a video making fun a little bit of Javier's video doing a Fueda thing when he rips the stuff off the whiteboard. And we were glad to see that we got over 300,000 views of that thing in the United States, and that's lovely and fine, whatever, right? You put a goofy video together, you get a lot of people to watch it, which I think actually says a lot more about how you people feel about the serious stuff I put together that gets like, 11 views, right? But interestingly, and this is what I wanted to mention, it got over 1 million views in Argentina. They are very proud of the fact that they are showing international leadership. Javier himself doesn't get 1 million views on some of his own videos, but some schmuck, Mike Termott, in the United States makes fun of it. It gets 1 million views in Argentina. Those people are proud of what they're doing, and I think that we need to encourage it.
Yeah. Mr. Hornberger?
I wouldn't invite anybody. I mean, the way I figure it is, a libertarian president's going to be in a fierce fight against the Pentagon, the CIA, the NSA, the Social Security Administration, the whole IRS. Fight those battles and forget those state dinners because your hands are full fighting against these agencies because they're going to come after you with a ferocity, the likes of which is unimaginable. I wouldn't bother with state dinners. I'd focus on the fight, winning the fight.
Dr. Reichenwald?
I answered.
Oh, yeah, I apologize.
Javier is how it's
Lars
pronounced.
Mapster.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Milei, obviously, but I would like to invite the people that are most antagonistic against the United States so that we can have dialogue with people like President Xi from China that we can have dialogue. Obviously, Putin's not coming because he's so afraid that he's going to get assassinated if he leaves his country. But there, I would like to talk to all the world leaders that we are antagonistic against, so that we can start having a dialogue. Because this isolationism, it causes us to put up walls, and it causes us to continue these foreign conflicts that we've been talking about. And I want to end that. And the way to end that is to end trade wars and start dialogue.
Thank you. All right. I was going to ask where would you visit, but you might say Argentina, and it would be the same question. So we'll just move on from that. Okay, this is a 30-second answer for this. Will you support the nominee if you were not selected as the candidate? From Mr. Mapstead down.
Yes, I will be a max donor to whatever person wins the nomination if I am not the nominee.
I'm running.
Yeah, okay. All right, this needs a little clarification then. Yes, assuming it's one of the 6 of us. I don't like these trick questions where, oh, by the way, it's Donald Trump. No. As long as it's one of the 6 of us, yeah, we're cool.
Yes, in fact, I got into this not about me. I really didn't have any political ambition in my life. In fact, I was recruited to do this. It's not about me. I will support this party, and I will continue to support the mission of decentralization, localization, nullification, and the entire project of libertarianism, regardless of whether I win. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, I voted Libertarian since 2010. I'm not going to stop voting Libertarian. And here's the truth of it. My first choice wasn't our nominee in 2020. I wanted John Mons to be the nominee, but I still got out and I still supported our nominee in 2020 because I liked their policy. I liked what they had to say. And as long as we have a Libertarian on the ballot, I'm voting for a Libertarian.
Thank you. I think this might be the last question in our, once lightning round. There's a classic episode of Seinfeld where George Costanza is just trounced in a discussion with someone, and a day later says, oh, if I said this. So this isn't a day later, but is there something that's during the debate that you didn't get the opportunity to say that you'd like to clarify now? I'm making this question a little verbose because I think it might require a little more thinking. Is there something that you didn't get a chance to say? Okay. Oh, well, we have, despite the fact that this is not, you're not going to accuse me of asking a trick question again, are you?
No trick questions.
All right, go ahead.
But I was a little offended by that idea that I had to spend time thinking about I don't like to think about anything that comes out of my pie hole. Look, I want to plug another website. Our team is launching an artificial intelligence bot that we call LISA, the Libertarian Intelligence System application. You can find it at libertarianintelligence.org. I hope I said that right, libertarianintelligence.org. You can go to the basic website, MikeTremont.com. You can go to goldnewdeal.org, and you can link over to it. But here's the idea. It's a bot. It's kind of fun. It's an artificial intelligence bot to answer questions the way a libertarian would. You get it so far? It's in beta phase, which means, yes, it is possible to trick it into saying something stupid if you work at it. But do me a favor, go check it out. If you love it, great. If you hate, if there's something that you find that's quirky or you don't think is quite right, do me a favor and email me. My team is still working on training it. But the idea here is for this to grow into a vehicle that we can use to spread libertarianism beyond our shores. By that I mean the Libertarian Party, not to Argentina. It's I think potentially a very, very powerful vehicle because a lot of people love these bots, and we need to learn how to use these as well.
Yep, I'd like to go. So I want to win for the Libertarian Party. I want to win electoral votes on election night and deny Donald Trump and Joe Biden the presidency. And how I'm going to do that is I'm focusing on a couple of key states. Maine and Nebraska are 2 of the key states that we can easily win electoral votes and deny this candidacy, them winning the election. So I went to Maine, and what they told me was they didn't have ballot access. And so I immediately got to work working on ballot access in Maine. Chase and I flew there to Maine and worked the streets to get registered voters. Maine was completely screwed. The Secretary of State deleted all the Libertarians off the ballot. I quickly realized that we weren't going to make ballot access, and since this is one of the key states that I'm very focused on, I put in $25,000 of my own money in order to secure Maine ballot access. And I got other people to donate significant sums of money to get that together. And we hired crews of professional people because I realized quickly we weren't going to be able to do it ourselves. And so I'm very pleased to announce, as Karen Ann said, we achieved Maine ballot major party status, and I can't stress enough how important this is because any candidate can now automatically get on the ballot in Maine as a Libertarian and doesn't have to jump through the stupid hoops of ballot access anymore.
Dr. Rechtenwald.
You know, I don't think I have much more to say that I haven't already said. I could go on forever, and but I want to say that this campaign is more than a campaign. My campaign is a movement, and the slogan for the campaign says it all. It's "Wreck the Regime." This is not about taking a chainsaw even to the state. It's about taking a wrecking ball to the state. And this has to be done, not Michael Rechtenwald leading the charge and being the white knight who goes into D.C. and undoes the system or whatever. This has to be done by us at the local level. This can't be undertaken from the top down. So I think that even this campaign is not a top-down type of a mission. It is a bottoms-up grassroots mission. And I applaud the work that Lars and Mike are doing on the ground, and Chase and Jacob. You know, I think this is all part of it, and I think that's the kind of thing that we need. We need to do local work, local grassroots movement, get the power to the people at the local level, because the closer the government is to the people, the more liberty people have. Thank you.
Mr. Hornberger.
Yeah, as you can see, we got our battles up here. You know, when we're off the stage, we've all become friends at these conventions. But there are differences, as you can see: immigration, Social Security, Medicare, taxation. And there is another issue that defines this campaign that hasn't come up, and that's education. Now, we all agree, abolish the Department of Education, standard stuff. Republicans say it all the time also. But what distinguishes my campaign from the rest of them is they all favor either school vouchers, which involve taxation and the violation of the non-aggression principle, or taking over the public schools with libertarians to show Americans that libertarians can run this socialist system better than Democrats and Republicans. Our job is to lead America to freedom. And the only freedom position is the separation of school and state, the way our ancestors separated church and state. I understand the president and the federal government has no jurisdiction over local school districts, but in a presidential race, you have the opportunity to make the case for what genuine freedom is. And the only case for genuine freedom is getting the state entirely out of education, not by school vouchers and not by taking over the public school system.
Mr. Oliver.
So I want to let everybody in this room know that if I'm our nominee, I guarantee you we're going to have some wins. Now, the idea that we're going to win the White House, that might seem a little far-fetched for some people, but there are other wins we can have. We can win ballot access in states all over the country, so it makes it easier for libertarians to get on the ballot and provide that choice for the voters. We can win major party status just like we got in Maine, so that way there's no barriers to us getting on the ballot, and we get more media attention and more news that we should be getting. We can have local libertarians getting elected all over the country, and if I'm our nominee, I'm going to identify as many local winnable libertarian races, and we're going to support those candidates. And lastly, I make this promise to you, my last metric of victory if I'm our nominee, and I want to hit it, is I want to double our party's membership and have that sustained through the next presidential election so we can continue to survive, thrive, and grow. But I can't do that alone. I need each and every one of you to get out in your neighborhoods, get out to your friends and your family, and speak the message of liberty so we have twice as many people at this convention in 4 years, 4 times as many people, 10 times as many people. That's what I'm inspired to do, and I hope you're inspired to get out in your community to do it too. Let's fight for freedom, all of us. Regardless of who the nominee is, we need to fight for freedom for each and every one of us in our neighborhoods and our communities, and I can tell you if I'm our nominee, we will have somebody traveling across all 50 states to make it happen. We will win. Thank you.
Thank you. You don't have to be a libertarian that long before you talk to someone about your political views, and you hear the classic "Mo roads." I mean, it's such an internalized part of our culture. We don't even say "my roads"; it's MUH roads. But that's not the only response. Say you've won the nomination. You are talking to a couple talking heads from Fox News, MSNBC, whatever it is. And this other Mo Rhodes kind of thing comes up. Well, third-party candidate, I don't want to waste my vote. I want to know what your reply to that, whether it's, well, yeah, let's say it's the talking head because on the TV, because that would get the, that would make your response the most important as opposed to just a one-on-one discussion. So, Dr. Rechtenwald, would you start us out with this one, please?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, first of all, your vote's being wasted anyway. That's the honest to God's truth.
This would be the nihilistic response, I believe, yes.
Not exactly. What I'm saying is that whatever they vote for, they're not getting anything from it, and they're losing already. And so they may as well vote for liberty for once in their lives in order to get something out of their vote. Right now, it's just wasted on the duopoly.
Thank you. Mr. Tremont.
Thank you. I think what my friend Michael means is that presently you are wasting your vote if you're voting for the Republican or Democratic Party because you're voting for a set of values and principles and ethics that do not align with your own. If you are voting for something that you fundamentally don't agree with and don't appreciate, that's a wasted vote. The way to hold these people accountable, the way to force them to take into consideration your views, your values, is to vote for another organization, vote for the Libertarian Party, so that they are forced to take into consideration our party. The reason that we are in this race is to disrupt politics as usual, to stop the duopoly from being able to disregard us as a political force.
Mr. Mapstead?
Our election systems are completely rigged. 70% of people's vote for president is irrelevant due to winner-take-all laws in states. Your vote just simply doesn't count unless you live in a battleground state for president. And that has got to change. We needed to have people's votes count because people feel disenfranchised and disillusioned at the system. And when they feel disenfranchised and disillusioned at the system, things like BLM start happening, things like January 6th start happening. Both the left and the right are completely fed up, pissed off, and they don't feel like the system is working for them. And that's what my Voters' Bill of Rights is all about, unrigging the system to make it fair and transparent for all citizens.
Mr. Oliver, please.
So I just want to speak to this a little bit because I got a lot of it when I ran for Senate last year. You're a spoiler. You're spoiling the election. Let me just tell you right now, we libertarians are not spoilers. We are participants. We're participating in a system. We're using our voice and our vote. The spoilers are the parties in power that refuse to give us a better way to vote via ranked choice voting or approval voting. And why do they spoil our elections? Why do they make your vote worthless? Because it helps them maintain and control power over you. So we need to reject this system, reject duopoly, reject the old ideas, and vote outside the two-party system. And the Libertarian is the absolute best vehicle for you to have your rights respected.
Mr. Hornberger.
Yeah, I think the response is very rational. It depends on the issue. I mean, if a voter, say, that favors immigration controls, and most voters do, is faced with Donald Trump or a libertarian presidential candidate that favors immigration controls, why would he waste his vote on a libertarian? Never. He's going to vote for Trump. He's going to vote for DeSantis. He's going to vote for Kennedy. He would be wasting his vote. That's why an LP presidential candidate will get 0 votes on that position, because they would be wasting their votes otherwise.
Thank you. By the way, when you brought to mind when you mentioned Robert F. Kennedy, he was offering as a fundraiser spending a day of falconry with him.
How much did you bid?
Speaking to that meat and potatoes crowd there.
Man of the people. Man
Falconry.
of the people, Robert Kennedy.
He's really getting that 16th century monarch vote.
Enjoy that Kennedy privilege for just
Then-
one day.
Then the other thing was whale watching, a day with, I kid
Come
you,
out with us and do
I grew up in Pittsburgh. It's not.
You too?
Yeah, yeah, whale watching. Me and Ron Paul, that's where we get it from. It's another example of big whale keeping the little man down. By the way, I'm going to start working in some of the questions that were submitted by the audience. There were some wonderful questions, many of those, but what was rare? Good handwriting. A lot of you were in stroke recovery, I'm guessing, from some of that handwriting. It's a little rough to read. I'll answer this one. How would you address the $34 trillion national debt? Hello, debt. Okay. Art Carney. Wait, what can we learn from the recent election in Argentina? I mean, we're all excited. Some great stuff happened there, but what's the old Zig Ziglar line? The old motivational speaker: "Success leaves clues." Well, what kind of clues was that success leaving? What can we learn from that? I mean, I'm shocked. I mean, when have you be adopting that hairstyle? No. Okay, he had big hair. Okay. Mr. Mapstead, start us out, please.
Yeah. So there was I noticed a thing today that was talking about he deregulated rent controls and rent regulations in Buenos Aires, I want to say, and that immediately the stock of rental housing went up dramatically, and the price of rental housing went down 20%. And this vindicates me of all the rent control laws that I've been trying to beat up in my own state for the last 15 years. I'm very excited about that. So I think what we can learn is that there is a certain point where the people are suffering enough that they finally throw up their hands and say, enough with the duopoly, enough with communism, enough with socialism, enough with big government spending. Let's try something different because we're so miserable that we have to do something else. And that's when libertarians come in and finally win.
Thank you, Mr. Tremont.
Yeah, let's hope that we don't have to get to 100% annual inflation for us to at least have our ideas imposed on the duopoly. I think one of the things that we learned in Argentina is that a clean, crisp, fully differentiated message can work, right? It's not like Javier was the only and first libertarian ever in Argentina. That would be an exaggeration. The reason he was so successful is because he was unapologetic about it, right? If there's one thing that we need to learn from that, and by the way, learn from our lack of success in recent libertarian presidential campaigns of our own, is that trying to seek common ground with Republican politicians and Democratic politicians is a losing proposition. We need to seek common ground with their constituents, of course, and most of their constituents have a libertarian streak. They wouldn't identify it as such. Most Americans can't spell libertarianism. But the idea of completely differentiating yourself from the duopoly, from Republicans and Democrats, cutting a clean, hard, crisp edge against them philosophically is a winning proposition.
Yes.
Yeah, so Javier Milei didn't just oppose the duopoly, and that's in Argentina, but also the state itself. So he made very clear that the state is a parasite. And he made it very clear that he was utterly about this, absolutely dismantling the state. And so afuera became his main slogan, that is out. And so what we saw is also he's an Austrian school economist, trained in the Austrian School of Economics. And then he has shown that people will listen to this. He slaughtered socialists in debates and on TV, and he was mercilessly attacking them. And so it shows that you need to have a basis of understanding about what socialism is and why it's completely flawed in all its premises. And I do. So I'm able, and I have been writing about socialism for 5 years, in 5 books for 8 years, destroying it because I know it from the inside out. And that's what's necessary.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Hornberger.
Yeah, let's focus in on it from the standpoint of the Argentine people. I mean, they were looking for answers to all the problems that are facing their society, huge problems. I think there's a segment here in America, in fact, I know there is, that's doing that same soul searching. They're looking for leadership, and we're the ones that can provide that leadership, but not with your standard reform-oriented message. It's got to be our principles. We got to restore the original founding principles of this party. And that addresses the segment in American society that is ready for radical change. The middle class, the upper middle class, the wealthy, yeah, they're getting hurt by inflation, no doubt. You know, have to cut out a couple of movies a month, or no more car washes every month for their Cadillacs. But there's the lower segment that are getting crunched by this machinery, and they know it. Those are our voters. But they will only come to us with libertarian principles, not reform-oriented Republican-like principles.
Mr. Oliver?
So I think there's a lot of lessons we can learn from Milei. Not all of it is from what he's going to be doing, because it's quite early in his term, though there's a lot of early encouraging signs that we're seeing. But what I think the lesson we need to learn as libertarians, so we don't have to wait until we have massive runaway inflation the way Argentina has, is that we libertarians have to get better at speaking our principles and speaking our policy to regular, normal, non-libertarian folks. We have to be able to export our ideas outside of this room here in this convention and export it out into the wider stream of mainstream political thought. That's why we have to have a presidential candidate who is willing to get out and be energetic and meet amongst the people, to not just stick ourselves within a libertarian echo chamber, to be willing to challenge the powers that be, to be willing to go out there and challenge the norms of political thought, and really say we can do this differently and without the state. And I think that's a lesson we can learn from Milei, because if we want to wait until we have 125% inflation and 1 in 4 people living in extreme poverty, we can do that, but it'll be miserable for millions of people. So I think we as a party should just be better at communicating our values. Let's all work together to push our values outward, and that's how we're going to win before we have these major problems, and we can solve the problems before they become as gigantic as they are in Argentina. It's way easier to tackle the problem now before we have 125% inflation, and that's the commitment I'm making.
Thank you. Next question. I was a libertarian a long time before I was a, for lack of a better way to put it, LP libertarian. I mean, I heard of the philosophy, started reading Rothbard, Mises, oh, it's great stuff, agree with that. You know, podcast out there everywhere. But then when I got into more the world we're in right now, it's easy, but until then I realized we don't all necessarily get along. I mean, you all are getting along up here, and that's wonderful, but you know how it is. There's different caucuses, different everything within our group, and sometimes it's a friendly rivalry, and sometimes it's this. So with that in mind, the question is, do you have a plan, and if so, what, to unite the caucuses and in a broader sense to achieve greater party unity? Let's start with Dr. Rechtenwald, please.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not just a caucus person. I'm actually running as a libertarian, period. And so I think that the caucuses can unite on core principles. There will remain differences. I think that those can't necessarily be transcended or resolved, but we can come together on core fundamentals. And as long as that's the case, then we can unite the party. I don't think that should happen at the expense of fundamental principles, and those are self-ownership, of course, and ownership of what one produces or homesteads. These are the main premises, property rights, and the fact that we don't have any other rights really than what stem from self-ownership to begin with. So those are the fundamentals, and as long as we can agree on those, we should be able to unite the party. It isn't about one caucus over another. I think the caucuses, a lot of the divisiveness has been, I think it's a lot of phenomenon of online activity, and it's not as, I've noticed in the real world, as they call it, in the IRL world, it isn't so profound as I had anticipated. So I think we can do it on the basis of fundamental principles. And I think that I can articulate those principles well. Thank you.
Mr. Hornberger, please.
I think there's only one way to unite this party, and that's to run an exciting presidential campaign. I mean, I've heard all this talk about, we got to get local people elected and all this, but let's face it, This nation measures this party by the presidential race. And to run an exciting presidential race, I think would unite this party, especially if there's a breakout, a major breakout in votes from the electorate. And what is that exciting race? A race that is based totally 100% on libertarian principles. That's what excites me. I think the cardinal sin of the presidential campaigns we've been running is boredom. They're boring. Reform this, reform monetary policy, reform Social Security, reform the income tax, reform the military, reform, 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 put me to sleep. But you run a campaign that's based on our principles, our original principles. That's what gets my heart thumping. And that's what will move the American people. That's what will unite this party.
Mr. Tremont?
Yeah, I think Jacob has it exactly right. The reason there has been animosity, one of the reasons there has been animosity among the caucuses is because we fight about what it is that led to our lack of success in prior election cycles. And look, I might as well say it because I think this is a point of differentiation for us. I'm not going to be able to hide the ball here. I'm a big believer in the caucuses. I participate with all of them. I support them financially. I participate in their conversations. I personally have been enriched by each one of them. And yes, no one has made any secret of the fact that I've had some pretty tough arguments with the leadership of each one of those caucuses. But having said that, I'm a big believer in their existence. I think that they can help bring people into the party. I think that they can help advance certain ideas. I do not like the behavior of caucus members when they try to run down other caucuses and other party members. I don't like it one bit, and I've let people know that. But having said that, Jacob is exactly right. The way to unite this party is by running an unapologetically libertarian national campaign, because it is what each and every one of us, irrespective of caucus affiliation, is interested in advancing.
Mr. Oliver?
Raise your hand if you're tired of libertarians infighting. All right, I can make you this one solemn promise as your presidential candidate. I'm not going to be engaging in the infighting in the internal politics of the Libertarian Party. As a presidential candidate, my job is to reach outward to new voters and bring them into the House, not to try to control who has the House or who's running the House. So I will say this, I'm not endorsing any LNC candidates. I won't be endorsing any platform or bylaw changes. I trust you, the delegates, to make those decisions. My job is to be a presidential candidate and reach outward. And like these two gentlemen said, we do need an exciting and enthusiastic campaign. And let's look at the metrics of that. I've raised more money from donors than any of the candidates on stage. I've traveled more miles than any of the candidates on stage. I've gotten more media hits than any of the candidates on stage. I am tireless in my ability to get out and be active. I've traveled to 44 states. I'll be the first Libertarian presidential candidate ever, pre or post nomination, to campaign in all 50 states, because we need a national candidate for a national party. And that's the commitment I make to you, as well as to no more participating in infighting. Hey, I've done it in the past, everybody has. But you know what? Sometimes you have to be an adult in the room and you have to do what your job is. And that's being a candidate for President of the United States, not being the chief infighter or instigator within the Libertarian Party.
Not everyone has. To be fair, not everyone has.
That's true. Not everybody has, but I think a lot of us have. There you go. I don't want to speak to everybody. You're correct.
Mr. Mapstead?
Imagine on election night, they're going across the map. California is blue, Texas is red, Florida is red, New York is blue. What the hell is this gold crap on the map up here? I want the talking heads to explode. I want every American to Google what is a libertarian, because we are the talk of the town, because we led chaos to the election. That is how I found out that I was a libertarian. I took a political quiz and Googled what is a libertarian. I want everyone in America to Google what is a libertarian. When we win this electoral vote on election night, we're winning for libertarians finally. We're finally having a national win. This drives new membership. This drives new donations to our party. This is how we grow the party. We need to get behind something that is successful. We're all infighting because we're fighting over the scraps. We're fighting over the bottom of the barrel. What we need to do is rise up, give the Libertarian Party a massive win, and put us on the map. That's what I'm trying to do with this election. I put $500,000 of my own money so far into this campaign. I know what it takes to win an election, and that is money. And I'm going to continue to fund my campaign into the general election. And reach millions of people with finances that we need, and it's very hard to collect money and to get donors right now. So that is going to be a major issue in this campaign. I've been in 8 national polls now. The media has picked me as the representative of the Libertarian Party in the national polls, and I'm there with 8 so far, and I look to be in many more.
A question, Mr. Mapstead. You use the phrase, we're going to look up there and we're going to create chaos. What's that mean?
So if
nuts and bolts terms.
Sure. So essentially, if we can create a contingent election, if we deny both Trump and Biden 207 electoral votes, it goes to the House of Representatives. And you saw how contentious it was when they were trying to pick the Speaker of the House. Imagine the House of Representatives trying to pick the damn President of the United States. It'd be insane. And there is an opportunity, and it's the only path for any of the gentlemen on this stage to become president, and that is for the House of Representatives to pick the Libertarian candidate as the President of the United States.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next question may give us some of the infighting and sharp elbows that we've all been hoping for. I'm very disappointed in all of your good behaviors. The would-be letter sent home to your parents. What key point or idea or plan distinguishes you from the other LP candidates? And please name names as you do this. I mean, not just say, and I'm not, in all seriousness, trying to stir that, but I want to get specifics. What distinguishes you? You are chomping at the bit, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
So,
because I have a policy in place.
Go for it.
I believe I'm the only Libertarian candidate on the stage that actually has a solid policy position on how to get the student loan debt crisis finished once and for all and get the government out of the student loan business. It involves making all currently government-held student loans interest-free as of today, and you pair that with no new government loans. What this will do is it will push the student loan system back into the private banks where they will be determining loans based on the value of those degrees. When that happens, colleges will actually have to compete for those dollars and they'll actually have to lower tuitions to be in line with what the worth and value of those degrees are. And I'm the only candidate on stage that's actually spoken on that issue, and I think it's because it's important for us to speak to the next generation, these millennials and Gen Zers who are about to be saddled with tons of student loan debt, and I think we need to have a solution that gets the government out of it, helps provide a little bit of relief for those who have been stuck in the system for too long, and you make it revenue neutral by cutting some bases and cutting some military spending and bringing some troops home. So it wins, wins, wins for everyone.
All right, in essence, all of you were brutally called out for that because he said he was the only one. Would any of you like to respond to that?
Yeah, I would definitely say that our policy is very similar in that we reduce the interest rates to 0 and that we get the government completely out of the education system and out of the loan system, because by forgiving these loans and continuing with that, we're just creating the next generation of problems. It doesn't solve the problem. We have to get the government out of the loan business altogether.
All right, Mr. Hornberger, what distinguishes you, plan, policy, et cetera, from the other candidates? Name
I want to be your
names.
candidate for president because I want to run a campaign of principle for the party of principle. I love these guys, but they're reformers. They want to support Social Security. They don't believe that freedom will work if you immediately abolish it. So they got to continue Social Security, the initiation of force for the next 25 years, for 65-year-olds all the way to 90. They want school vouchers, which violate the Libertarian non-aggression principle. They want the Federal Reserve to continue expanding the money supply, which involves the initiation of force. They believe in immigration controls. They want the state to manage. The operative word is let. They want to let in more immigrants. When you're letting in, that means by permission. That is the opposite of freedom. We need to run a campaign for the first time in the past 20, 25 years that is based 100% totally on genuine, true libertarian principles and reject this notion of welfare, warfare, state reform and continuation and of Social Security, Medicaid, off-ramps, immigration controls, immigration police states, and the rest of the things that have characterized Libertarian Party presidential campaigns for the last 20 to 25 years.
Any of you want to respond to that? 30 seconds?
Yeah, I would, if you don't mind.
No, have at it.
Okay. I mean, you know, I think I think it's a false characterization to suggest that there's no other real libertarians here. There's absolutely other real libertarians here. In my case, I happen to be, I think, the only anarcho-capitalist, the only anarchist on the stage, and that is to say I don't want any state at all. I'm looking for a private property society. So I will, like Javier Milei, I am actually an anarchist. I am not arguing for reform. I'm actually arguing for abolition.
All right, well, Paul, would you like to?
Oh yeah, I would want to say, you know, you call us reformers and Republican light socialists in the past and say that those policies can't attract voters and can't attract things. I would say that you would also have called Donald Rainwater, if he was up on stage, a Republican light socialist based on his policies when he ran for governor. And he actually won 12% of the vote in Indiana. He got second highest vote in a third of the counties. It shows that you can be a principled libertarian, but absolutely understand conditions on the ground as they exist and understand that we have to put our principles into practice in the real world. We cannot just be philosophical libertarians. We actually have to work with Republicans and Democrats in the legislature if we're wanting to be elected. And I think Rainwater proved that. It doesn't make him any less libertarian than you, me, or anyone else on stage.
I'd like to jump on the rebuttal bandwagon if I can. Jacob is right that we all need to be as libertarian as possible. Where we disagree is not this silly idea that he's more libertarian than we are. It's just that Jacob, and I consider him a friend of mine, he's much better at talking than listening. The problem with his policies are that he thinks it's libertarian to end Social Security tomorrow and screw all the retirees. I don't find that libertarian. I find that damned unethical. And Michael Rechtenwald, who I think is one of the most beautiful writers I have ever read, to be honest, speaking of weird things that haven't been said yet, if you guys haven't read his book on wokeism.
You're a beautiful man, Michael.
Yeah, that may have come out wrong, but I do think that it's a book worth reading. You know, I'm not trying to suggest that Michael is less libertarian. I just think that his so-called libertarian idea of closing the border is damned unethical. That's the problem.
All right, I believe that's the end of the response. Now it is your turn, Dr. Rechtenwald. What distinguishes you?
I thought I just said that.
Well, you were in a response to him.
Oh, yeah,
but
yeah,
if you'd like that to be your...
Yeah, I think my response basically is to reiterate. Listen, I'm a writer, so I don't like to be redundant. But what I would say is that I think I have a principled libertarian position. You know, one of the things Walter Block said about libertarianism is, unlike a lot of things, it's not a cult. There can be differing views within it. It isn't like a brainwashing cult where you have to have the same thoughts as everybody else. In fact, that's utterly unlibertarian. It's like erasing individual difference from the room. I think there's a lot of difference that can subsist within libertarianism without denouncing the other person as not libertarian. And I think that I have firm, principled libertarian views, and that are defensible, that are also make sense, and I think they actually work in terms of how they in the real world. For example, the immigration issue. I'm not for closed borders. What I'm talking about is an invitation basis of immigration. That is, people are invited. There could be, you could issue as many invitations as you like, as long as you're willing to vouch for the person. So this just puts the responsibility on the person doing the inviting, and it also says to the rest of the public who may not want the person there, that don't worry, we're not going to infringe your property rights, which happens to be the basis of libertarian principle. Property is the real principle on which libertarian is based.
Mr. Chamath, what differences would you cite? What distinguishes you from other LP candidates?
I think that if you go to our basic website, which is MikeTremont.com, it's kind of hard to spell. You might go to goldnewdeal.org and flip over to the basic campaign website. You'll see a very professional campaign in terms of our messaging as well as our personnel. We've got 15 people on our team that are professional. We pay them already. We are getting ready to make the turn into the general election. We're way ahead of schedule, and we feel very good about it. One of the things that we lean into is our credibility, and we do that because not so much that my personal background in public policy and public service is all that important to a bunch of libertarians. The reason we lean into it is because it is so important outside of this party. If you don't meet the credibility threshold that the rest of America expects, you don't get the time of day. And this is important, not only because we want our philosophy spread, but because we need votes, we need money, and we need media attention. And so we lean into very hard my own personal background in public service and public policy, which is absolutely unique on this stage.
Mr. Mapstead?
I told you before that we have a very good policy team, and I failed to mention my good friend Michael White from Arkansas, who is on my policy team. We have been crafting policy twice a week for the last 6 months, and we have detailed white papers on each of the pieces of policy that we're putting forth. My campaign is about building a future for the Libertarian Party. I hope that the pieces that I'm putting forth live long after I am still running for president. Look, the problem is going to be money in this election, and I guarantee you that I am going to reach more people than any of the candidates on this stage with the Libertarian message. Because of my background in social media marketing, I've spent hundreds of millions of dollars on ad buys. I'm reaching 500,000 people a day on social media through ads, and we're going to continue to do that through the general election. Look, we can have a great message, but if you cannot get that message out to the people and they don't hear it, then it doesn't matter what your damn message is. So we need to do crazy fundraising. I put $500,000 in, that's nothing. We need $5 million, $10 million. We need to activate the donor base and get people to give us money so that we can get on the national stage and get our message out there. I'm tired of playing at the kids' table. I want to be at the big table, giving the big speeches with the mass media and out there in all these advertising kind of things that we can do so we can get our message out there. Because I believe that people want to hear the Libertarian message, that they will resonate with the Libertarian message, but we have to get it to them in order for them to understand it.
All right, if I understood you correctly, one of your distinguishing features is that you are the one that can get the funds in, get the money. Would anyone like to respond to that?
I mean, I can say I haven't raised $500,000 of my own money to put in. I'm not wealthy enough to do that. I recognize that. But when it comes to earning donations from people, I have the largest number of donors, the largest amount of donation money, and that's because I've been traveling so much and meeting with people one-on-one. And when you meet with people and you get to talk to them one-on-one, they're more apt to want to donate to you. It's a lot better than trying to do this online. We have to be out willingly amongst the people. By the way, if anybody would like to donate to the campaign, they can go to votechaseoliver.com right now, and we would really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Am I the only one that's shocked it took that long for a donation pitch in this thing? Good Lord, what's wrong with you people? Good job.
Yeah,
Dr. Rechtenwald.
I'd like to push back against this idea that it's all about money. Look, there was a guy named Oliver Anthony. He was a nobody in Virginia until he wrote a song, and then suddenly it blew up, and it was known all across the country within a matter of days, really. This guy didn't have any money. He now has money, but he didn't have any money to begin with. So what I'm getting at here is that I've received a lot of press. It's all free. It's all free press. I've been on major shows, and I will continue to get on them, including Tucker Carlson. So anyway.
Mr. Mapstead, would you like to take 30 seconds to respond to them?
Yeah, I hate that it's about money. I don't want it to be about money. I literally grew up with no electricity in an outhouse in a goat barn. So it's never been about money for me. I found a very successful business. I sold that business for $500 million in 2007. I don't want it to be about money. I don't think that politics should be about money. I'd like to get the money out of politics, but right now, the world that we live in, it means that you have to have money in order to win an election, and that's just the base facts of it all.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, yes.
I want to reinforce what Michael Rechtenwald says. This is not about money. That's just nonsense. Chase Oliver proved this. Chase Oliver, in his race for Senate in Georgia, had tens of millions of dollars of free advertising. He was the most influential libertarian in America. You couldn't buy that kind of advertising with the money that even Lars has. And he got in the debates. You know how you hear this, oh, Jacob, well, just got in the debates. He got in the debates. He got his message out to every voter, exhorted them to vote for him. He ended up with 2% of the vote. It's message that counts, not money.
I want to speak to that a little bit because there's a lot of money in that campaign. I raised $20,000 in my race. I earned 81,000 votes. My cost per vote was 18 cents. But to pretend that I was on an equal playing field with Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker is just plain false. They spent between $20 and $25 per vote that they earned. It was a $250 million election. Now, all that tells me is that I can do a lot with very little and have an outsized impact on the election. I'm proud of that 2% of the vote because I got a heck of a lot more votes than somebody who doesn't have the energy and passion to do so.
Thank you. All right, I believe we've reached the time for closing statements. Before we do this, I want to thank you all for indulging my first time moderating a presidential debate. I know you're shocked. You think I do this every week. But it's my number one priority was to be respectful and fair, and hence my going back here and then back in there. You know, because really one of the few things I have control over is the order of speaking. So I tried to ping pong this and from the middle, from the sides, as much as I could. I have to tell you, I'm grateful in my moderator's position that all of you were extremely prepared. You could have been a bit more antagonistic. I just want to tell you how I live your life. But there are worse problems to have. So, and thank you all for your indulgence. So let us start with our, stay down there, Penn, our closing statements. I will do this so random. Let me see. Michael Tremont, please join us. Or please, your closing statement, please.
Do you want me to do it from here or from over there?
Up there would be fine, sir.
This would be fine. Nobody wants to see us trying to walk past each other again.
That did prove to be somewhat awkward.
It was incredibly awkward. Look, the reason I'm in this race is because I took a look at the opportunity in 2024 and came to the conclusion that we have an obligation to get this right. And there's a couple of particular things that I believe that we can do and have to do and should do that will help us be successful going forward. And that is two things. Number one, we need to run a completely differentiated campaign. We can't leave any mistake that we look anything like a Democrat or anything like a Republican. We have learned this, and by the way, I don't mean to say anything disparaging about our previous candidates, right, in prior election cycles. I think on a personal level, we're all fans of them, right? But if for no other reason than trial and error, we have learned that we have to completely differentiate from the duopoly. I believe that the reason that Gary Johnson's campaign imploded in 2016 when he forgot what Aleppo was, right, was not because he had forgotten the name of a town in Syria, but because he had not given his constituents enough reason to hang on to him. Contrast that with Donald Trump, who once said that he could probably shoot someone on Fifth Avenue without losing a great deal of support. That's a little bit weird, but I don't think he's wrong. Everyone knows why they like or dislike Donald Trump. Everyone's going to know why they like or dislike this campaign. The other thing that we need to do differently is to run a very, very professional, very, very credible campaign. All the more so because we're running on the most transformational collection of libertarian ideas possible. This means that you need to redouble your efforts at maintaining your credibility and your professionalism. I will be leaning into my background. I'm the one that has a double career in public service and public policy, a longtime economist at the university level. I've worked for the White House. I've worked for the federal government. I've worked as a police officer. I know how to address these issues. Thanks a lot.
Mr. Mapstead.
When I say to you that the system is rigged, you know that that's true. Whether it be our economy, our election system, our education system, our criminal justice system, our immigration system, all of these systems are rigged against the regular people. I'm fighting for my friends and family who are struggling under massive inflation due to printing of $34 trillion of debt, which has been stolen from the American people. It is a hidden tax that the government is using to steal out of your pockets every single day. We need to end this charade. We need to stop the federal government from overreach and getting into your lives. My policies are all built around unrigging these different systems that we have. I want to win for the Libertarian Party on election night. I want to bring a win for the Libertarian Party as a whole. You can visit me at lars24.com on my website, at Libertarian Lars on X, and Lars for President on Facebook. I want your support as a delegate when we go to Washington, D.C. I want to implement my plan to help libertarians win across the nation. I want to grow the party, and I want to get massive donations for our party so that we can spread the message of liberty farther than we ever have before. It's time to leave the kids' table and get to the grown-up table.
Thank you, Mr. Hornberger. I'm sorry?
I just want to say unrig the system is my campaign slogan, so I wanted to get that in.
Unrig the system.
Unrig the system.
Gotcha. Mr. Hornberger.
Wreck the regime.
Since this is a political campaign, I'm going to wrap this debate up with a straight political message. The reform-oriented message of my honorable opponents, they take me to task for my campaign of principle, but they can't deny that their reform-oriented message cannot garner votes. We know this. Joe Jorgensen, 1.1%, immigration reform, Social Security reform. Chase Oliver, 2%, a year ago. Mike Tremont, a year ago, with the same message, less than 1%. And now we got two polls, Wall Street Journal polls, in September and December, 1% for 2024, that mention Lars. And I got a confession to make to you. I'm with the 99%. I reject this reform-oriented message that has come to represent our presidential candidacies for the last 20 or 25 years. It's a bad message, especially for a party that prides itself on liberty. 20 years ago, I ran for U.S. Senate in Virginia, statewide race. I got 7% of the vote on this kind of campaign. Open borders, abolish Social Security immediately, Medicare immediately. Because you see, there's a group of voters out there, our voters, that love our principles. They may not join our party, but they will vote for these principles, and I proved it. And I did the same thing 3 years ago when I won 7 out of 9 primaries with this message. If you're happy with the 1% or the 2%, great, stick with it. If you want to break out to 10 to 15%, I can double what I did in Virginia 20 years ago with the strides that we've made in this party over the last 20 years. Not because I'm any special guy, because I'm not, but I have something that these guys don't have. I got the message that can pull that group of voters to the voting booths and vote for us. But most important, our job in this party is to lead America to freedom. And you're not going to lead America to freedom with welfare, warfare, state reform. You're only going to lead America to freedom by making the case for freedom in a presidential campaign. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Rechtenwald.
Yeah, so we've heard some other plans and the campaigns, and so you've heard all of these, all of our slogans, and mine's wreck the regime, and that is what I'm trying to say is that the regime itself needs to come down, and we can't do that by sending a white knight as the presidential candidate and hoping that they somehow break in and get X amount of votes, and that's going to solve our problems. I'm afraid to tell you that I'm afraid that I'm here to tell you that's not true. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. I'm not playing on Fantasy Island. I'm playing in reality. And in reality, what we can do is we must get government out of our lives, and that means wresting control from it and vesting it in the people at the local level. That is the closest government, and the closer government is to you, the greater your liberty. This campaign is about expanding liberty, not about getting votes, trying to break some threshold. I think I will do better than the other candidates because I have name recognition that goes far beyond them in many circles that they don't reach. But that's not the object. The object is to increase liberty on the ground. It isn't even, the other parts are really vehicles. Even the founder of the Libertarian Party said that. These are just tactics, not the real goal. The goal is liberty, not vote getting or even, getting on ballots. That's just a tactic to get liberty expanded, and that's what my campaign is about. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Oliver.
First, I want to thank you, our timekeepers, and everybody else for having an awesome debate. Thank you for having us out here in Arizona. I want to be the candidate for president for the Libertarian Party because I want to bring energy and enthusiasm to this party that we haven't had in a long time. I want to run a positive campaign because if we do nothing but talk about how bad Joe Biden is, we're no better than Donald Trump and vice versa. We have to present a clear, stark contrast with the energy and enthusiasm we need. And we also need to have the energy and enthusiasm to bring out the libertarians of the next generation. Generation Z are the generation we need to be talking to right now, because in 15 years, they become our largest voting bloc. So we need to start speaking to them now so that we have a, if we don't plant the seeds now, there's no crop to harvest come fall. And that's what we need to be doing, is speaking out to younger voters and bringing in new energy. And that's what I want to do. Put me on stage next to Donald Trump and Joe Biden, and you'll see a clear contrast, because those are two 20th century people with 20th century ideas who spent most of their adult life in the 20th century. We need 21st century ideas, people who have actually been tested not by the Cold War, but the war on terror, because it's my generation that was sent to go fight the war on terror. It's my generation that's had to fight runaway inflation while we're raising our families here in this country. And I can say right now my metrics speak for themselves in terms of volunteers, donations, energy, activism, and the fact that on this stage I'm the most qualified candidate, because I've run the race that had gotten the most votes running as a libertarian against Republicans and Democrats on a ballot. I did that last year in Georgia when I ran the Senate race. I got national news and attention when I forced a runoff and made the duopoly sit down and think about how pathetic they are before they go vote again. And I will do that in the other 49 states. Give me our nomination, and I will stick a thumb in the eye of the two-party system, not just in Georgia, not just in Arizona, but in every state across the country. We will have impact, we will have wins, and we will grow this party. I make that my solemn promise to you. My job will not end on election day. My job the day after election day, if I'm not elected president, is to get out there and make sure that every single person who voted for me gets connected to their local affiliate. I will be giving data directly during this campaign, not to the national party, but to each of the 50 state parties, so they can activate those voters in real time. Let's get it done. Go to votechaseoliver.com.
If I may ask our candidates to stand while the audience shows their appreciation. Ladies, your 2024 Libertarian Party presidential candidates. Thank you, gentlemen. Oh, photo op. Lars, photo op time.
You know what? Let's put these microphones back.
That's a great idea.
Microphones. And look like we're not just standing on the ground. Take them off.
Oh, we take them off? Okay.